But today, examples of it are whispered about in auction rooms for $1 million. A single penny. Brown. Ordinary. Forgotten. And yet, it carries a secret that has turned everyday people into legends overnight. The year was 1960. America was changing fast. New presidents. New dreams. And at the Denver Mint, millions of Lincoln pennies were being struck every single day. Most were perfectly normal. But late one shift, something went wrong. Subtle. Silent. Invisible to the naked eye at first glance. A tiny mistake slipped through quality control, and the coin world would pay the price decades later. At first, no one noticed. These pennies circulated like any other. They bought coffee. They sat in ashtrays. They rattled around in glove compartments. Some were lost forever. Others were spent without a second thought. But a handful survived, and those survivors would one day shock the entire numismatic world, because hidden within some 1960 pennies is a minting error so rare that even seasoned collectors missed it for years. And when one finally surfaced, the reaction was instant disbelief. Collectors were stunned. Dealers leaned in closer. Magnifying glasses came out. And suddenly, a coin worth 1 cent was no longer just a penny. It was a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. A sharp-eyed collector noticed something strange. The details weren't quite right. The numbers and the date looked off. The lettering had a ghostly doubling. At first, experts argued. Some said damage. Others said coincidence. But deeper analysis revealed the truth. This was no accident after circulation. This was a genuine mint error, struck at the Denver Mint in 1960 and released into the wild. Collectors began tearing through old rolls. Bank vaults were searched. Inherited coin jars were reopened. People who had ignored pennies their entire lives suddenly couldn't stop looking at them. The rarest 1960 Lincoln pennies show dramatic double die features, especially in the date and the word Liberty. The doubling isn't subtle when you know what to look for. It's bold. It's unmistakable. And it proves that the coin was struck from a misaligned die at the mint itself, not damaged later. One particular specimen, preserved in near-perfect condition, sent shockwaves through the market when it appeared at a private sale. Collectors watched in disbelief as the price climbed higher and higher, until it crossed into territory no one expected from a modern-era penny. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin. Auction houses are quietly searching for more. And longtime collectors admit something they never thought they would say: they're checking their pocket change again. Because this isn't ancient gold. This isn't a medieval artifact. This is a penny that looks almost identical to millions of others. He wasn't a professional collector. He wasn't hunting for treasure. He was sorting through old coins inherited from a relative, ready to cash them in at the bank. At the last second, he hesitated. Something about one penny felt different. He noticed the date. 1960, a small D mint mark below it. And then, the doubling. This wasn't just rare. This was elite. This was the kind of coin museums dream about. The kind collectors wait their entire lives to see once. And suddenly it belonged to an ordinary person who almost let it go for face value. Millions of 1960 pennies still exist. Many are sitting in jars, drawers, boxes, and forgotten envelopes. And while only a tiny fraction carry the error that drives prices into the $1 million range, the possibility is real. Tangible. Close enough to touch. As prices climbed, counterfeits appeared. Altered coins flooded the market. People tried to fake the doubling, scratching and reshaping numbers. And suddenly, identifying the real thing became more important than ever. To identify the true 1960 penny that collectors dream of, you must start with the mint mark. A small D, just below the date, struck cleanly into the coin, not added later. Then examine the date itself. Look closely at the numbers. True doubled die shows strong separation, not flat shadows or machine doubling. The doubling should look raised, like a second image, especially on the 1 and 9. Next, inspect the word Liberty. On genuine high-value examples, the letters show clear doubling, sharp and bold, not worn or smeared. The texture of the coin should feel original, not polished or altered. Any sign of filing, smoothing, or unnatural shine can destroy value instantly. A worn example may be valuable, but a high-grade, untouched specimen is what pushes prices into legendary territory. Clean surfaces, sharp details, original color. These are the factors that separate a few $1,000s from $1 million. Collectors were shocked when they realized how many had overlooked this coin in the past. How many were spent. How many were lost. And how few remain in top condition. Because this isn't just about money. It's about the idea that history, rarity, and fate can collide in the smallest places. That something dismissed as worthless can secretly hold life-changing value. Every time a penny hits the ground, someone bends down to pick it up now. Every old jar gets a second look. Every inherited collection becomes a mystery waiting to be solved. But one single detail turned it into a sale that stunned collectors and crossed $1 million. Picture this for a moment. A tired man emptying his pockets at the end of a long day. Loose change, lint, a few pennies scratched and dark from decades of use. Nothing special. Or so he thought. One of those pennies was a 1941 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin so ordinary looking that millions of Americans have held it without a second glance. But this one was different. And that difference would change a life forever. At first glance, the 1941 Lincoln penny feels boring. No silver shine. No rare date screaming value. Just Abraham Lincoln staring calmly to the right, the wheat ears on the back whispering of another era. During World War II, America was preparing for global chaos, and the U.S. Mint was striking coins at a frantic pace. Philadelphia, Denver, San Francisco. Machines running non-stop, pressure mounting, mistakes slipping through. Because while most 1941 pennies are worth just a few cents, a microscopic group of them were struck under conditions so unusual, so flawed, that collectors today consider them near mythical. For decades, experts believed these coins didn't exist at all. Then one surfaced. And the coin world froze. Collectors were shocked. Dealers leaned in closer. Auction houses went silent as the bidding climbed higher and higher, until it crossed $1 million. The penny wasn't shiny. It wasn't polished. In fact, it looked almost ugly to the untrained eye. But under magnification, something was terribly wrong, or incredibly right, depending on how you look at it. The metal composition was inconsistent. The strike pressure was uneven. And most importantly, the coin showed evidence of a rare transitional minting error tied to experimental planchets and wartime preparation. In 1941, the U.S. Mint was already experimenting behind closed doors. Copper supplies were being monitored. Alternative metals were discussed. Test blanks were produced in extremely small numbers, never intended for circulation. But a few slipped through. And when they did, they were struck with regular 1941 dies, no mint mark, because Philadelphia didn't use 1.1. Collector recalled the moment he realized what he was holding. He had owned the penny for years, sitting in a small envelope labeled Old Wheat Cents. No fanfare. No protection. One rainy afternoon, curiosity struck. He sent it for professional grading, more out of boredom than hope. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin, not because it's flashy, but because it represents something collectors crave more than beauty, a once-in-a-generation mistake. A moment when history, pressure, metal, and human error collided, because back then, quality control wasn't perfect. Coins were dumped into bags by the thousands. Nobody checked weight with precision. Nobody imagined that 80 years later, collectors would pay $1 million for a single cent. Another 1941 no-mint mark penny surfaced years later, this time from an estate sale. The owner had passed away without ever knowing what he had. The penny was found mixed in with foreign coins and arcade tokens. Dirty. Dark. Forgotten. When it hit auction, the bidding war was vicious. Seasoned collectors competed like gamblers at a final table. The room was silent except for numbers climbing higher than anyone expected. Now here's where the story turns personal, because this isn't just about history or auctions. This is about what might be sitting in your home right now. First, the date must read 1941. Not 1940. Not 1942. Exactly 1941. Second, there must be no mint mark under the date. That means it was struck in Philadelphia. Third, and this is where most people fail, the coin must be weighed precisely. Even a tiny difference in weight can mean everything. These rare versions often weigh slightly off from the standard copper penny. Look closely at the surface. Uneven texture. Weak strikes. Areas where the metal seems wrong, softer, grainier, almost unfinished. These are not damage. These are clues. Another cliffhanger that changed everything. A third specimen was rumored, but never confirmed. Some believe it's still out there, hiding in plain sight, passed from hand to hand for decades. Avoid common mistakes. Don't clean the coin. Don't polish it. Don't scratch it to test it. That alone can destroy hundreds of thousands of dollars in value. Always have it professionally evaluated. Always trust weight, metal analysis, and expert grading over internet guesses. Collectors still talk about the day that first 1941 no mint mark penny crossed the auction block. Some say it changed the market forever. Others say it proved that America's greatest treasures aren't locked in museums. They're hiding in drawers, jars, and pockets. But instead, it shocked the entire coin world and climbed toward a value of $1.1 million. A single Lincoln penny. No mint mark. Dated 1976. The kind of coin millions of Americans have held, spent, and forgotten, without realizing they might have been holding a once-in-a-lifetime miracle. Imagine this. A man cleaning out an old jar of pocket change, the kind that's been sitting untouched for decades. Pennies, nickels, dust, memories. Nothing special. Or so he thought. One dull brown penny catches his eye. Not because it's shiny, but because something feels off. No mint mark. A strange texture. A weight that doesn't quite match. He almost tosses it back. Almost. And that single hesitation changed everything. 1976 was supposed to be an ordinary year for pennies. Millions were struck. Billions circulated. Nothing rare. Nothing special. Or at least, that's what people believed for decades. But behind closed mint doors, small mistakes happened. Metal planchets left over from earlier years. Pressures misaligned. Dies worn down just enough to create coins that were never meant to exist. No mint mark means this penny was struck in Philadelphia, the busiest mint in the nation. And that's exactly where mistakes can slip through unnoticed. In 1976, while the country was celebrating its bicentennial, the mint was under intense pressure to produce coins fast. Corners were cut. Quality control slipped. And a handful of pennies were born wrong. This 1976 no mint mark Lincoln penny wasn't just old. It wasn't just clean. It had a combination of ultra-rare errors that should never appear together. Wrong metal composition. Anomalous weight. Microscopic doubling in Lincoln's profile. A faint but unmistakable die error on the date itself. Experts stared at it under magnification, silent. Then one of them said the words every collector dreams of hearing. When the coin went to auction, bidding started slow. A few $1,000s. Then 10,000. Then collectors realized what they were seeing. Phones lit up. Dealers jumped in. The room grew tense. Every bid pushed the price higher, faster. 50,000. 100,000. $500,000. Gasps filled the room. By the end, the hammer fell near $1 million, and suddenly, every 1976 penny in America was being looked at differently. Because here's the secret most people miss. It's not just about the date. It's not just about condition. It's about tiny details hiding in plain sight, details so small that most people spend these pennies without ever noticing. First, the metal. A standard 1976 penny should be copper-plated zinc. But the rare versions may be struck on the wrong planchet, sometimes leftover bronze blanks from earlier years. The weight difference is subtle, but critical. One wrong gram can mean the difference between 1 cent and $1 million. Then there's the strike itself. Look closely at Lincoln's face. On the rare examples, there may be slight doubling in the lettering or profile. Not the obvious kind, The kind you need light, angle, and patience to see. The kind that rewards people who slow down. Because unlike ancient coins locked in vaults, these were released into circulation. They bought coffee. They paid tolls. They sat in drawers. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and nobody noticed for decades. Another example surfaced. Different owner. Different state. Same core traits. Verified. Authenticated. Suddenly, this wasn't a fluke. It was a pattern. A tiny batch of coins that slipped through history, hiding in plain sight while the world moved on. People started checking jars. Inherited collections. Old piggy banks. Dealers couldn't keep up with submissions. Most coins, of course, were ordinary. But every once in a while, something strange appeared. And every strange coin reignited the dream. Life-changing discoveries don't always come wrapped in gold. Sometimes, they look exactly like the smallest thing you'd never think to question. Start with the basics. The date must read 1976. There must be no mint mark under the date, none at all. Then check the weight. A digital scale can reveal whether it matches standard copper-plated zinc, or something very different. Next, study the surface. Look for unusual texture. Weak strikes. Doubling in the letters of liberty, or I in God we trust. Pay close attention to Lincoln's profile, especially the edges of his face and coat. Cleaning destroys value. Even wiping it lightly can erase microscopic clues that prove authenticity. Many potential $1 million coins have been ruined by good intentions. If you suspect something unusual, stop. Protect it. Get it professionally evaluated. Because the difference between ordinary and extraordinary often lives in details smaller than a grain of sand. Collectors still talk about the first discovery like a legend. A penny no one wanted. A coin nobody cared about. Until it rewrote what was possible. But it stunned collectors when whispers began that it could be worth over $1 million. Picture this for a moment. A regular morning. Loose change dumped on a kitchen table. Coffee still hot. And right there, mixed in with nickels and dimes, sat a completely ordinary-looking 2006 Lincoln penny. Copper-colored. Worn. Forgettable. Or so it seemed. No one watching that moment could have imagined this tiny coin would ignite one of the most intense modern penny hunts in U.S. history. Because the truth is, some of the most valuable coins ever discovered didn't come from vaults or museums. They came from pockets. From jars. From couch cushions. And this 2006 mint mark Lincoln penny is wrapped in exactly that kind of mystery. At first glance, there's nothing flashy about it. No gold shine. No silver glow. Just Abraham Lincoln staring forward like he has for decades. Millions of these pennies were struck at the Denver Mint in 2006. Millions were spent. Millions were lost. But buried among them, a microscopic mistake changed everything. In the mid-2000s, the U.S. Mint was producing coins at massive speed. Machines ran day and night. Dies wore down. Quality checks missed things. And in that chaos, rare errors slipped through, errors so subtle that even experienced collectors overlooked them for years. A small group of error specialists began noticing something strange on a handful of 2006 pennies. Letters that didn't look right. Details that seemed doubled, shifted, or wrong. Weight that felt slightly off in the hand. At first, no one believed it mattered. Pennies from the 2000s weren't supposed to be valuable. It appeared quietly. No headlines. No hype. Just a single listing that made seasoned dealers pause. The images were grainy, but the details were unmistakable. A rare minting error so extreme it shouldn't exist, a combination of die doubling, off-metal striking, and alignment issues never officially recorded. Phones rang. Emails flew. Experts argued. Could this really be real? Could a modern penny challenge the legends of the past? What started as curiosity turned into disbelief as numbers climbed higher, and higher, and higher. 5 figures. 6 figures. The room went silent. When the final hammer fell, it wasn't just a sale, it was a statement. This penny had crossed into the realm of $1 million potential. The value isn't just about age. It's about mistakes. On the rare 2060 Lincoln penny, collectors search for extreme doubling on Lincoln's ear and eye, distorted lettering In God We Trust, and abnormal spacing in the date. Some examples were struck on the wrong metal planchet, giving them the wrong color and weight. Others showed die cracks so dramatic they look like scars frozen in copper. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins. Error specialists are paying fortunes just to examine them. Stories are spreading of people who spent one unknowingly, and others who checked a jar and froze in disbelief. As news spread, thousands of people began checking their change. Social media exploded. Coin shops reported lines out the door. And suddenly, a penny from 2006, a year most people ignored, became one of the most hunted coins in America. First, the mint mark. It must have a clear D under the date, showing it was struck in Denver. No mint mark means it's not the one. Second, examine the date and lettering under magnification. True doubling looks raised, not flat or shadow-like. Third, check the weight. Even a fraction of a gram difference can signal an off-metal strike. And finally, look for unusual texture, cracks, or distortions that don't match normal wear. If you believe you've found one, experts say only professional grading can confirm it. And confirmed examples, they don't sit unsold for long. But instead, it shook the coin world and reached a value of over $1 million. Picture this for a moment. You're standing at a counter, emptying loose change from your pocket. Pennies clink together, worn, dull, ordinary. One of them catches the light for just a second, nothing special, or so it seems. Most people wouldn't even look twice. But this exact moment, this is how $1 million stories begin. The 1984 Lincoln penny without a mint mark looks like one of the most common coins ever made. Billions were struck. It circulated everywhere: gas stations, grocery stores, coffee shops. For decades, it lived quietly in America's pocket change, unnoticed and underestimated. And that's what makes this story so dangerous. Because the rarest treasures often hide in plain sight, collectors were shocked when whispers began spreading through the numismatic world. A seemingly normal 1984 penny had surfaced, no mint mark, nothing flashy, yet experts froze when they examined it under magnification. Something wasn't right. Or rather, something was very right. This penny wasn't supposed to exist in this form. During the early 1980s, the U.S. Mint was struggling with metal compositions, die pressures, and experimental striking adjustments. Mistakes were quietly happening behind the scenes, mistakes never meant to leave the mint. Yet somehow, a handful escaped into circulation, mixed in with ordinary scents like wolves hiding among sheep. One collector tells the story of finding his in a jar of loose change inherited from his grandfather. No special packaging. No protective holder. Just decades of dust and copper tones. He almost spent it. Almost. Something stopped him. A feeling. A hesitation. And that hesitation changed his life forever. The rare 1984 no mint mark penny tied to $1 million valuations isn't about age. It isn't about beauty. It's about microscopic flaws created at the moment of striking. Certain examples show extreme doubling in Lincoln's ear and lettering, known among collectors as one of the most dramatic double die varieties ever released into circulation. Not machine doubling. Not damage. A true double die, created when the hub impressed the design twice at slightly different angles. Collectors were shocked because this doubling is so bold, so undeniable, that once you know what to look for, you can't unsee it. Yet millions of people have already seen it without realizing its importance. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on verified examples. Auction houses watch these pennies like hawks. When one appears, phones ring. Private offers explode. Prices climb not by thousands, but by hundreds of thousands. In pristine, high-grade condition, these rare examples have been whispered to approach $1 million or more, making headlines and rewriting what people thought was possible from pocket change. Many of these coins were spent, used, worn down by decades of circulation. Which means some are still out there. Still hiding. Still waiting. A collector once submitted what he thought was a $20 curiosity coin. When the grading service returned it sealed in plastic, the label alone made his hands shake. Rare variety. Authentic. One of the strongest known examples. The estimated value didn't feel real. His heart raced. His life changed. One penny, one moment of curiosity, turned into $1 million miracle. Collectors were shocked again and again as new discoveries surfaced. Not rolls from banks. Not museum collections. Ordinary people. Ordinary change. Extraordinary results. Not every 1984 penny is valuable. Most are worth 1 cent. Damage, scratches, flattening, or machine doubling destroy value instantly. Cleaning the coin can erase tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential value. One wrong move, and the miracle disappears. To identify the real prize, you must start with the basics. The coin must be dated 1984, with no mint mark under the date, meaning it was struck in Philadelphia. Next, examine Lincoln's ear closely. On the rare double die variety, the ear looks doubled, swollen, almost like a shadow is permanently etched into the metal. The doubling is raised, not flat. It's part of the coin, not damage. Then look at the lettering. Liberty. In God we trust. On valuable examples, letters may show strong doubling, separation, and thickness that jumps out under magnification. This isn't subtle. This isn't guesswork. When you see it, your pulse will quicken. The higher the grade, the higher the price, and in near perfect condition, values can skyrocket toward $1 million. That's why professional authentication is critical. Never trust online guesses. Never trust wishful thinking. A real coin deserves real verification. As awareness grows, fewer examples remain undiscovered. Each year, the odds shrink. Every coin found today is one less miracle waiting in circulation. And yet, new discoveries still happen. But one example shocked collectors and climbed toward $1 million, turning ordinary pocket change into a life-changing miracle. Imagine this for a moment. You're standing at a gas station counter, digging through your loose change. Pennies feel worthless. You barely even look at them. But hidden among those dull copper coins could be a 1985 Lincoln penny, a coin so misunderstood, so overlooked, that most people would never guess it holds a secret powerful enough to shake the entire coin world. The year 1985 didn't seem special at first. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies in Denver, and the public barely noticed. But behind the scenes, something went wrong, something so subtle that even trained eyes missed it for years. The Denver Mint was pushing production hard, equipment was aging, and quality control quietly slipped. That's when rare errors were born, errors that should never have existed. One collector, sorting through rolls of pennies late at night, noticed something strange. The coin felt different. The details didn't match. Lincoln's portrait showed an unusual weakness, but at the same time, certain letters appeared distorted, doubled, or off-center. At first, he assumed it was damage. He almost tossed it aside. Under magnification, the penny revealed a rare and dangerous combination of minting flaws, die deterioration, striking anomalies, and in some cases, dramatic doubled elements that were never meant to leave the mint. These weren't small mistakes. These were catastrophic errors that slipped through unnoticed and entered circulation. Words spread quietly at first. Then auctions began to explode. A pristine 1985 penny with extreme error characteristics and near-perfect condition sent shockwaves through the market. Bidding escalated fast. Collectors competed fiercely. Prices climbed higher and higher, until whispers of $1 million no longer sounded insane. Most 1985 Lincoln pennies are still sitting in circulation today. In jars. In drawers. In old coffee cans forgotten in basements. The difference between a worthless penny and a fortune comes down to tiny details. Details that most people miss every single day. One particular example, graded at an exceptionally high level with dramatic error traits, stunned seasoned professionals. The surfaces were sharp. The luster was alive. The errors were undeniable. When the hammer finally dropped, the result sent a message to the entire hobby: modern pennies can be worth serious money, life-changing money. more examples began to surface. Not many, but enough to prove this wasn't a one-off miracle. The 1985 D penny had officially entered the realm of legendary modern coins. Dealers started hunting aggressively. Collectors began roll-searching like never before. Ordinary people started checking their change with trembling hands. It starts with the mint mark. The small d beneath the date tells us it was struck in Denver. That's critical. Many of the most valuable examples come from this mint. Next, the strike quality. Watch Lincoln's face closely. Look for unusual softness mixed with distorted features. Then examine the lettering. The words Liberty and I in God We Trust may show doubling, smearing, or odd thickness that doesn't look normal. Dye deterioration doubling. Unlike normal wear, this appears as swollen, distorted edges on letters and numbers, almost like they're melting. On extreme examples, the date looks unstable, and Lincoln's profile appears subtly warped. This is not damage. This is a mint error, and it's one of the reasons values can soar toward $1 million territory when condition is right. Condition is everything. A worn example might still be interesting, but a high-grade coin with blazing original luster is where the real money lies. Some of the most valuable pieces were pulled straight from rolls and never circulated at all. They survived untouched, waiting decades for someone to recognize their power. They assume modern pennies can't be valuable. They don't look closely. They don't check under magnification. And they certainly don't imagine that a penny dated 1985 could rival rare gold coins in value. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle simply because he paid attention when others didn't. He questioned what looked off. He didn't dismiss the coin. And that single decision changed his life forever. Collectors know the supply is tiny. Once these coins are found, graded, and locked away, the opportunity disappears. Every undiscovered example becomes more valuable with time. And the most terrifying truth of all, so take a breath. Grab a magnifying glass. Pull out your pennies. Check the date. Look for that D mint mark. Study the letters. Examine Lincoln's face. Ignore the voices telling you it's just a penny.